Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Davin and I'm the Graduate Enrollment Manager here for our EdD program at the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm joined today by some of our current students and we're going to have a question and answer session. Some of you have submitted questions ahead of time, which we're very happy about, but feel free to submit in the comment section if you'd like as we move along. I'm going to let our students introduce themselves and then we're just going to get started. So, go right ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Keith Caldwell. I am a second year student in the EdD program in the Higher Education Management area of concentration.
Hi, Yvette Wisher, third year student in Higher Ed Management.
Hi, I'm Kenny Donaldson. I'm also a second year student in Higher Ed Management ARCO.
Okay, so we might have a Higher Ed Management ARCO party here today, but we assure you that we're not just going to focus on that, so please don't hesitate to ask questions even if you're not considering higher education management as a concentration. So guys, I have a couple of questions, like I said, that students submitted, and I think you're the experts on these ones. There might be some other questions that I'll answer, but we can save those for later. The number one question that I got from students, that I get from students all the time actually, is about balancing your personal and professional life with your life as an EdD student. We all know this is a part-time program and you're all full-time working professionals. So you have a couple balls in the air, and I'd like to hear from all of you if you have different experiences on that whole balancing act that you do. Whoever would like to go first.
Sure.
Okay, I'll go first. I would say that, when you first start your first year, it's a transition. Working full time and then going to school. But you learn how to balance it. You learn how to make it work for your schedule. Because everyone's job is different. So I work with students on a regular basis as the Associate Director of Diversity in the Swanson School of Engineering here. And so it's a heavy base where I'm in meetings all day with students. And so I've learned how to use my evenings very well or use early mornings well that work with my schedule. Also, I know when it's time to be at home though, it's time to be at home because you have to learn that balance of, your family is important to you. Those are the people who are there to support you, to push you through. They're nourishing you and nurturing you. And so in that, you can't forget about your family as you're going through the work of the EdD, but it is a challenge to balance at first until you find what works for you.
I know in my case, the alignment between my work here at Pitt and my ARCO classes, my skills courses, whether it be in strategic planning or human resource management or financial management, budgeting, or even the upcoming accreditation course, they've all dovetailed nicely with my day job. So it's been a good opportunity to sort of maximize effort. Still additional effort, but anytime I can make those class projects applicable to my work responsibilities, it's been a really great learning experience because it allows me to basically carry out assignments in a really meaningful way, but then also sort of keeps me in the same headspace as a student and as a member of the faculty here at the School of Social Work. On the family side of things, good supportive people for sure make a big difference. Juggling children and spouse and so on and so forth. It's certainly challenging, but good conversations with the family to make sure that it's done right.
Yeah, I think Yvette and Keith both hit on very important points. You have to know your strengths and you have to know when is the best time for you to study, when is the best time for you to write, and when is it family time. And I think as someone that's in this program with kids, it's important for me that when I'm with my children, they get all my attention. I shouldn't be thinking about school. I shouldn't be thinking about other things. So I think it's important to be able to balance all that out and just know when your strengths are. So for me, usually 10 o'clock on is when I do my writing, when I do a lot of my reading. So that works for me because my kids are usually asleep. We have a quiet environment, but it works different for different people because some people may not be able to do that. So I'd say it's best to know what your strengths are and when you work best.
Very good, very good. So in conjunction with that, one of the questions that I get a lot is about how much time on average will I spend doing coursework in a week? I get the feeling that the answer here is it depends, but do you ever have or have you found a consistent rhythm that you're mentioning mornings, evenings, but hours-wise? Are we looking at 6 hours a week, or can you even quantify that?
I know in my case, I'd say on average an hour or two a night, sort of what it looks like. Sometimes there's a nice little break where I'm not having to focus on schoolwork for a little bit. Other times, it's a lot of hours for a lot of nights in a row. But yeah, it's quite an ebb and flow of it all. But it's on average, at least for me, maybe an hour a night in total, sort of how I've averaged out over the first couple of years, a year and a half here.
Anything different for you guys?
I would just say it really does depend on the class. So certain classes, when you have group work, it may be more time because you're working with other professionals where it's just not you. So, you may be on a Google Hangout, then you might need to do your own personal work in between there because you're taking 2 classes, and some may be group work on one class and the other class may be your individual work. So it depended. My first, I would say probably 2 years, probably was 3 to 4 hours depending on the class. Now it's more because I'm writing. So now it can be 4 hours, it could be 5 hours. I try to touch it every day so you can kind of break it down, and that's easy to do. And I say that to anyone who's interested. If you touch your work every day, it'll make it easier than if you kind of take days off and then try to go back to it. If you make it part of your schedule, then you kind of have an even flow to go through the classwork.
Okay.
The way that I break it down, what I found my strength is I like to read during the week because I like reading in chunks. So I'll read from 10 to 12, try to do 10 to 12 maybe every night. And then on the weekend I like to write, and I give myself a lot more time. So Keith and I will come up here, and we have other people in our cohort that come up and write together. And I think that that's one of the strengths of the cohort model as well, because you find other people that need that weekend in order to write, so we get together and we write together. And I think that that's one of the strengths of the program as well. But for me, personally, doing that hour to 2 hours of reading per week and then just using the weekend to write works for me. And again, it depends on the assignment, but that's typically how it works.
Okay. It's interesting to hear you say that, Penny, because I know I've spoken with some of our students that are up in the Erie area, and they kind of do some of the same things. They told me about how they get together from time to time to study or to go over things or to prep for something, especially if some of them are doing group work together. So it sounds like that happens across the board with students in the different classes, and of course, depending on the class that you're in. Very good, very good. So kind of speaking about classes and being along that line, we're a hybrid program, so you have this kind of online course delivery, and then you're coming into class one Saturday per month. What's your experience with that? Is that something you struggled with, or is it something that seems kind of actually seamless? How would you describe that to students as far as the course delivery goes in the hybrid model?
I mean, I'd sort of build off your point about staying connected with your work constantly makes a big difference. It's not as though you have sort of a month reprieve where you sort of waver from the stuff you're focused on. As long as I've remained consistent in my work building up to those monthly meetings, it's been quite manageable. Use of discussion boards, and also just building strong relationships with classmates and whatever technology we use, whether it be Google Hangouts or something to that effect, sort of keeps all the content live in between the actual in-person sessions for me.
Okay.
Third year, you don't have classes, so it's just you and your advisor, and obviously you're working with some of your cohort members that you might write with. But I actually miss classes now, so I never thought I would miss class. Let me keep it real, Facebook Live. I never thought I would miss class until this year. I miss class. I miss my cohort members because we would learn from each other, we would challenge each other. I've learned some of the greatest. My struggles have been some of the greatest works in class, in which other people have helped me through those struggles. Being a professional, you think you know everything sometimes, and being a practitioner, I've been doing this for 15 years, so I know it. And I've had people who are in K through 12 break me down and say, no, you better look at it like this, or STEM, look at it like this. And so I miss that constant, love and nurturing and checking each other that we had those 2 years. And so you're in the classes, enjoy the classes, because it's the camaraderie that you build together as a team that helps you through. Because that's what's helping me through my third year is those relationships of like, we're going to make this together, we're going to make it out, we're going to make it sure that we're doctors and we're not going to leave anybody behind. And that was all built off of our class connection. Awesome. So classes are important.
Yeah, and I think the model of the way the classes are also helps because like Yvette mentioned, you have one class with the whole cohort. So all of my work previously has been in higher ed, but to have people that are in ed leadership, K through 12, STEM, what they add to, my knowledge base and what I'm able to talk to them about as well helps. But then you also have your second class where it's just your ARCO and you talk about things that you all see in your practice. So I think that model is perfect where you have the big group for one of your classes and then the small ARCO for the second class. That works out real well.
That's great. You guys slid right into my next question to describing what the on-campus, our Saturday classes are like. And it sounds like you're really benefiting from being in contact with not just the people in your ARCO, but the people in your cohort altogether. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think back to I think it was the context of education course. It was the educational policy course that we took last summer, I think. Just to be alongside 60 classmates representing K to 20 and even preschool now, pre-K.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating opportunity for me to see sort of have a better understanding of what's leading up to my work with students as undergraduates, and to bring all those perspectives together and really do a better job seeing the sort of pipeline of education and how it could be.
How it could be in those discussions. Yeah.
I think one of the good things too is the program's evolving. So they're adding ARCO, so the out of school ARCO was just added. I believe there was another ARCO that was added maybe 2 years ago or something. But the fact that they're realizing where they can bring other people in that can contribute to the conversation, and that it's not a static program where they feel like, it's good where it's at. They're constantly making improvements and changes, and they reach out to us for feedback on where we feel changes need to be made. And I think they do the best job that they can in trying to react to certain things or be proactive as opposed to reactive in changing things and giving feedback. So I think that's important as well.
Okay. You just mentioned Kenny, they are reaching out to you. You're speaking about our faculty.
Right.
And so that kind of leads to another question that I hear about a lot. Students are concerned about what advising is like through the faculty. Can any of you speak to your relationship with your advisor and how that works out? And do you stick to just one faculty member or do you collaborate with others?
Well, we have the same advisor. So Keith and I have Dr. Gina Garcia as our advisor, and she is just extremely helpful from the time you get into the program as you transition to year. She's very structured. We have monthly meetings. She's always available to meet face to face or meet, through Google Hangout or Skype. The relationship is, she looks at what you want to do in your primary practice, and then she helps you build upon it, and she pushes you to get the best out of you when you're looking at really what is your primary practice within your field, and then how you can make a change within that. And so she has been a great asset. I mean, she's the reason why I actually chose to do the EdD, because I had taken a class with her previously just to take a class, and it's her fire and her energy towards, just looking at what I want to do. I'm talking about race in my primary practice, and she's one of the greatest specialists and scholars on race that you will have as a Chicana woman. So she just fits into the narrative. So she has been a great advisor and friend to push you, but to challenge you.
She does group advising, which is great.
Okay.
So for me to come into my first year and to see what Yvette and others were doing in their second year, and for Yvette to see what people were doing in their third year, and for me to see the same, being a part of people's defense preparation and overviews and stuff, those monthly or bi-monthly group advising sessions that we do sort of take advantage of that cohort model that we have, but at the same time, straddling across multiple years, it's just a fantastic way to do it. And she sets a high standard. She holds us to it, but she gives us the information we need. It really reinforces that this is a program that expects a dissertation in practice that's going to be quality, going to be useful.
Right, we're going to publish.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And
Kenny, what's your experience?
I have Dr. Jill Perry, and Jill has been great. Jill's doctoral work is actually on the EdD program, what it means and how the EdD is carried out for practitioners. So she's been of great assistance to me. I work better with, I'll contact you if I need assistance. She reaches out to me when she just checks on me, but I'm better with being more, self-motivated, and if I need assistance, she's always there for me. I'm able to reach out, she'll respond. Just telling a personal anecdote, she was going to a conference, she was on a plane, she didn't have her computer, she pulled up one of my papers on her phone, read the whole paper on the phone, got back to me with feedback. So to get that kind of input from an advisor is very rare, but Jill's great.
Awesome. That's awesome. So this is a really supportive environment, it sounds like, both with your classmates and with our advisors. But I'm curious to know, what was, so far, the biggest kind of challenge you have faced as an EdD student, academically or even personally?
Probably two things that I identify. One is maintaining a commitment to aligning every course assignment possible with my dissertation in practice, right? That problem of practice we focus on. It was really critical. It was advice I got early on. I wasn't quite sure how to do it right away, and figuring out how to, in some cases, even crowbar what my focus is and what my writing is on
Yeah.
to align with each of these classes. That was a shift, and it was something that I had a little prep on that people guided me towards, but it was something that took me a little bit of work. And the other was just getting back to academic writing in general. You know, I teach, I spend a lot of time in the classroom, but I'm on the other side of the table. And most of my writing has been all sort of technical and professional writing. So to get back into that sort of space where I could really just wrestle with thoughts and ideas and write and revise and edit and revise again and so on and so forth. Yeah, it was just, that was certainly a shift for me. And it was probably one that was a bit humbling, that I was pretty comfortable in my writing. I realized that I needed to step it up for an EdD.
Okay.
I would say just my problem practice, putting it on paper and seeing it through. So you have to have a problem practice that is something that you relate to, that you're seeing in the field that you work in. And I would say if you know that ahead of time, that's always great. Because when you're figuring it out, you're going to kind of do your classwork and figure it out all while you're going through. But for me, it's been evolving with my problem practice and putting it down so that what I'm writing is really nailing down really what the problem practice is, and then how am I addressing this problem practice. So that's been an ongoing 3-year, battle for me. Okay, I know what this problem practice is. I see it every day, but putting it down and then being able to articulate it, then study it, then get the results out of that, and then publish it is something that is ongoing for me. As I say, it's a struggle, but it's a struggle that I'm proud of because it's who I am. And then when I'm done with it, I know it'll be something that will help others go through it too.
Great.
Yeah, just touching on what they both talked about, I think the writing piece for me, like I always felt confident in my writing, and knowing a doctoral program, the main thing for me was supporting your writing with the literature. So I would make statements that were just blanket statements, and they come back and say, "Who said? Where'd you get this from?" I said it. No, you need literature to back this up. So that's a huge piece for me. And then one of the challenges that individually I went through was I switched jobs in the middle. So my whole first year, all of my research was on one type of problem or practice. And then I had to start from scratch, starting all over. But I feel like it actually helped me because we were doing a literature review class. So the easiest way to catch up on what's going on in the field is to read the literature. So if I had done this after the literature review, I might have a different answer for you. But it was good for me to change before the literature review and get that literature under my belt where I feel more confident with my problem practice now.
Okay, awesome. So, speaking about problems of practice, this kind of leads to like ARCO because everybody is focusing on something different, and I know you all share the same area of concentration, but we have some students that kind of have a hard time really deciphering what they want to focus on. Do you have any advice, or did you struggle saying, I might want this ARCO or I might want this ARCO, and really trying to settle on a particular one? Do you have any advice on how to do that, or a similar experience that you can share about choosing your actual area of concentration?
I was pretty set on it from the get-go. I think the application process was helpful in that because I was, you all asked for some very clear goal statements and sort of where I would like this program to lead me in my career, and everything I worked towards and was building towards was around the sort of administration leadership of higher education institutions.
Okay.
So that sort of reaffirmed that for me, but I think the application process in my case provided a lot of clarity for that. It was really at that point just between that and SCAE, Social Comparative Analysis of Education,
Right. Yeah.
sort of the two that were up in the air for me. But
Okay.
again, the application made it almost crystal clear for where my focus is going to be.
Did you guys have a different experience, or?
I knew I wanted to do higher ed, but I would say to someone who is looking at different ARCOs, talk to the faculty. That's important. So talk to the faculty that are in that ARCO. Talk to the students that are in that ARCO. Because I think you'll get the perspective of what the ARCO really looks like other than what you see on paper, and that'll kind of give you a feel of what fits you. So that, I would say that will be helpful. Then secondly, make sure that whatever the ARCO is, it aligns with what you do so that you can get the resources to write on. Because it's kind of hard if you're like in industry, but then you want to do higher ed. Well, it's hard to switch that over because higher ed works a certain way where you kind of have to be there. So even doing your research when you get to your third year, it's difficult. So you want to align it as close to what you do as possible. But I would talk to the faculty and talk to the students that are in the program.
Same, I was just going to say, talking to faculty, talking to students, looking and seeing who's teaching certain classes as far as faculty does what they do, align with what you're doing. But I think talking to students is one of the crucial things that especially a lot of people coming in this program may be hesitant to do. But I'd say before I was able to talk to students before I entered in. So that's why, like Keith said, I was pretty set on higher ed management. But I think it's important to talk to students that are currently in the program, not just for your ARCO, but also for an advisor. Because, like I said, different styles work with different advisors. So you may have an advisor that's doing something in your area, but that advisor's, the way that they advise may not be in line with the way that you work. So I think it's important to talk to people about who their advisors are, students about who their advisors are also.
That's a great piece of advice. Which leads me to kind of my last question. If you could say something to, the you that was making application to this program not long ago, a piece of advice or just maybe an affirmation even to say to the past you as being now the current you, what would you share? What would you say to yourself?
Like I'm taking the first answer every time.
I'm gonna pass the hard one to me.
Come on, Keith.
Yeah. I'll step in then. Since you passed it to me, I'll take it then. What I would say is that we're all going through this together. I'm used to being very competitive in programs, so you're almost pitted against someone for a grade. And I think this is a very collaborative program where it's like if everyone collaborates together and does the work, you can all get good grades. And I think that's what's important because I don't feel like Keith or other people in my cohort are adversarial. I feel like we're all in this together. So if someone has something going on with family issues, we try to pick each other up. If someone has things going on in their personal lives, we try to pick each other up. So I think what I would tell myself starting is that you're all going through this process together to lean on other folks if you need to. Because, we're not all going to be strong throughout this program. We're going to have moments of weakness. I think it's important to lean on other folks as well.
Gotcha.
That was a good one, Kevin. I feel like you summed it up.
Taking your answer.
That's why I jumped ahead. I was say what I'm going to say.
Right. I agree with Kenny. I think that when the times get hard, remember why you did it. And it's to make a change. It's to make impact as a professional. So just remember why you did it.
Yeah, I think what's made this program enjoyable for me is the collaborative nature of my classmates, our ability to work together. I think as Kenny said in particular, life continues to happen regardless of whether you're a student or not. So it's been interesting to see, I know for me personally, I've had some things happen in my life and people have really stepped up and been supportive. It's just been sort of a cool part where for some reason I hadn't expected that.
Gotcha.
And that real sort of supportive piece. And just to know that on the front end that you're going to build relationships that are strong, professional, collaborative relationships that make the program what it is.
Very good, very good. So we just had a question come across live on our session right now with asking for some information about funding your education and what's available for that. So I'm going to say a few things. If there's anything you guys want to jump in on, please let me know. But our EdD students fund their education through just a few main ways. Number one, there are students that can take advantage of education benefits through their employer. And that might mean through your school district, if maybe you're a traditional K-12 teacher, or through your employer at the university, or even if you're not sure, I encourage you to always check in with your HR representative or a contact that you may have. You may think, oh no, my employer is not going to offer me anything to continue my education, but you may be pleasantly surprised, and or you may be what kind of inspires them to say, you know what, I think we can support our employees like this. And I think it would be a great investment. So always ask your employer and seek out any kind of education benefit you may have through your human resources at your full-time job. Secondly, even though we are a part-time program, our EdD students are eligible for funding through loans through our federal government. This does require filling out the FAFSA, which some of us might be familiar with even from our undergraduate days. It's pretty simple these days, online application, but you do have to fill it out if you think you might want to take out any federal loans. They are loans, you're not eligible for grants, it's loans only. Even if you're thinking, I don't need that, I'm not going to take out more loans, I would still encourage you to fill out the FAFSA. You never know what may or may not happen as we get closer to if you're admitted, you actually committing, and you don't get the loans if you haven't filled out the FAFSA. If you fill out the FAFSA and you get the loans and you don't want them, you can still just deny taking out those loans. So I would encourage you to consider that. And then thirdly, you have the avenue of personal lending through private financing firms and banks. Those will be loans as well. The one little point that I like to make is your interest rate is going to be better with those federal loans that you'll get through the federal government than it will be at a personal financing firm or a private bank, but it's still entirely up to you. Those are the avenues for funding for our EdD students, though. I'm sure you guys probably don't have anything to add to that, right?
Covered everything up.
Covered everything. All right.
I would just say look at it as an investment in yourself. That's the way that I approach it, because I knew that I was going to have to take out loans, but at the end of the program, I feel like I'll be in a better place, whether, to get another job or to move up where I'm currently at. So I just looked at it as an investment in myself, and I think that that's important to, the money, of course, is there, but in order for me to get to where I want to get, I knew I had to get this degree.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have another question that just came across about the dissertation process. And specifically it stated, what does the dissertation process look like? And so Yvette, you might be the number one answerer here amongst our group. What do you have to say about that?
So in your third year, leading up to your third year, you're working on your first 3 chapters. And so your first chapter is your introduction, the second is your lit review, the third is your methods. Once that is approved, you do your overview, is what approves it. You'll have a committee. You pick your committee. So it's 3 faculty. One is a faculty or practitioner that's outside of the university, or could be in the university, but they have to be someone who's practicing with a terminal degree. And they approve your dissertation for you to go on to do your research. Get IRB approval, meaning that you can do research and you're allowed to do interviews or do surveys, whatever method you plan on using. And then once you're done that, you're going to do your data, transcribe it, code it, and then you'll present on your last couple of chapters for your dissertation, your last semester in the program. So really your dissertation will be your last 2 to 3 chapters talking about your results, recommendations, and some impact that your research will have on your problem of practice.
I've just also add that it really starts from, May 15th of 2016. We stepped in there starting to sort of craft what our problem of practice was and really understand the difference between a traditional dissertation, which is looking to fill a gap in the literature and to become generalizable knowledge, where the dissertation of practice is really based off an opportunity to improve some aspect of your daily professional activities, right? In words, and it certainly may have applicability elsewhere, but really sort of having that more narrow, that very specific focus around the practice orientation of it all, the applicability, the practicality of it all. Mm-hmm. And that started in that first summer where we're really going through the process through our opening practitioner inquiry courses, where we were learning about sort of what is a framed problem of practice and what does it look like when it's really clean and really understandable and really grounded, and something that you can actually attack sort of as a scholar. Mm-hmm. So I'd say the process started even in a very structured way really early on, and to get that nailed down as much as you can early on I know for me was a big help in sort of continuing to build towards each of the benchmarks that happen along the way that are scaffolded out in the program's outline.
Kenny, anything?
No.
So one of the things I think is important to note is that the dissertation of practice is actually going to be changing as far as requirements and benchmarks that Keith mentioned a couple of things, and moving away from this full dissertation of practice and into what the faculty have labeled as what's known as an Eportfolio. And so our new students that are going to be entering are going to have a little bit different experience than what some of our current students are having, and that the Eportfolio is going to start to build essentially a compilation of different pieces of writing, with the idea that as practitioners, we're not necessarily, as you said, filling a gap in literature with our research, but we are working towards this evolution of research that's happening within your practice. And there's not always just one problem of practice, but there's many, and how you're approaching that in different ways. And this e-portfolio is going to be working in a practitioner sense. Instead of writing a lengthy dissertation and maybe just kind of shelving it and not going back to it, the e-portfolio being something that's a little bit more accessible to practitioners across the board, and that's what our students are going to be producing. So we might be doing another Facebook Live session sometime to elaborate even more on our ePortfolio requirements. Let's see, we have another question that just came across. Let me just look at this really quick, everybody. Does collaboration happen between colleges, between the law school and the School of Education? Have you guys experienced anything like that?
We've had some faculty, so one of our faculty this year for our budget class, I believe she was from the School of Computing and Information Science. So we do have some faculty that come from different areas. That's the collaboration that we've had. And then in our ARCO classes, we've actually had speakers come in. So across the campus, we've had like the Dean of Students come in to speak. We've had the head of HR come in to speak. So there's different people that come in to talk to classes as well.
We've also had senior leaders from other universities come, give lectures as well. And then also from the classmate side of things, we've got folks who are in our ARCO who are from all across both the University of Pittsburgh community as well as other academic units at other universities, Cornell and Virginia and
We just had another question about what our cohort looks like and kind of what that's made up of, and specifically if faculty when making decisions are trying to match a cohort geographically. And the short and quick answer to that is no. There's not special emphasis paid on geographic location of our students that apply for the cohort. Our cohort is typically between 60 and 70 students. We're definitely leaning closer to the 60 mark just because, as we've talked about, advising is really important for our faculty and how they work with our students. And so we need to make sure that we keep our cohort a nice size, that our faculty can spread their time without leaving anybody wanting or anything like that. So we're definitely looking at around 60 students for each cohort that is admitted each summer. We only admit once a year, and the cohorts do start in the summer. Geographically, it's going to be mixed. We have a mixed makeup of students that come from not just Pennsylvania, of course across the state, but also in many of the contiguous states that we have, New York, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia, New Jersey. We have had a student from, I believe, as far away as North Carolina.
We have a classmate from South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. Okay, one of the Carolinas. So there's not special consideration paid to geographic makeup of each cohort. Yeah. Oh, I think we have one more. How many students might be in each ARCO? STEM, for example, was a question we just had. So our ARCOs, the total size and in the total cohort, each ARCO, it kind of varies from year to year. I think we always tend to have a winner in that, this ARCO is the largest in this particular cohort. I think for the class of 2017, that was the higher education management ARCO was the largest. And in that class, the STEM ARCO, which our viewer actually just asked about, was the smallest. So it varies from year to year. Each of our 8 ARCOs are going to fall in there. We can have as few as 2 students in that particular ARCO in that cohort, and upwards of 18 or 19 in a really large ARCO as well. But again, no particular emphasis is paid when we're building the cohort to say, well, we really want this ARCO to be the largest this year. There are no goals necessarily set like that. We're still looking for the best possible candidates across all ARCOs that we receive applications for. And I think higher ed was the highest in your particular year too. I think. I don't.
It was the first year.
Don't hold me to that.
I think
But
yours was ed leadership.
Ed leadership tends to be a larger ARCO as well for our traditional K-12 people out there. So guys, I really want to thank you for taking the time out today, because we just heard how busy you are as professionals, and we know that we're also approaching the end of the year, which is just a busy time for everybody. So I really appreciate you coming in, especially I know our prospective students are happy to hear from you because they're tired of hearing from me. They get lots of emails and things from me all of the time. And I can't say enough of how much I appreciate learning from you and you sharing this with our students, because I know it's so important. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and maybe we'll see you again in the next Facebook Live session.